Before we dive in, comment where in the world you're watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. Blake's hand is on the back of my neck, his breath hot against my ear, and I know if I don't stop this right now, everything changes. I'm not gay. I've never even thought about a guy like this before. But his touch feels like fire, and every rational thought I've ever had is dissolving under the weight of how much I want him to keep going. Before we begin, if you want to hear uncensored stories, the ones too hot for YouTube, check out my Patreon in the description. Now let's get into it. The apartment listing had seemed too good to be true. 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, rent I could actually afford, available immediately. I'd been sleeping on my buddy's couch for 3 weeks after my ex kicked me out, so when the guy on the phone said I could move in that weekend, I didn't ask too many questions. I should have asked more questions. Blake answered the door on Saturday morning, and I felt something shift in my chest that I couldn't name. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that looked like he'd just rolled out of bed and hadn't bothered to fix it. His t-shirt hung loose on a frame that was lean but clearly strong, and when he smiled, I noticed the way it reached his eyes, genuine and warm. Ryan, right? His voice was deeper than it had sounded on the phone, with a roughness that suggested he didn't talk much in the mornings. Yeah, Blake, that's me. Come on in. He stepped aside, and I caught the scent of coffee and something else, something clean and masculine that I filed away without thinking too hard about why I'd noticed it at all. The apartment was bigger than the photos had suggested, with hardwood floors and tall windows that let in streams of morning light. Blake's furniture was minimal but tasteful, nothing like the generic pieces my ex had insisted on. Everything felt lived in, but cared for. Comfortable, without being messy. Your room's down here, Blake said, leading me down a short hallway. Bathrooms shared, but I'm pretty low maintenance. As long as you don't leave wet towels on the floor, we'll be fine. The room was empty except for built-in closets, and I could already picture where my bed would go, where I'd set up my desk. It was perfect, too perfect. I kept waiting for the catch. "This is great," I said, setting down the box I'd been carrying. "When can I move the rest of my stuff in?" "Whenever. I'm here all day." Blake leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed in a way that drew my attention to the muscle definition in his forearms. "You work downtown?" "Yeah, accounting firm. Pretty standard 9 to 5. I'm freelance, graphic design, work from home mostly." He paused, studying me with an intensity that made me shift my weight. "You have a girlfriend who's going to be here all the time? Just want to know what to expect." "No girlfriend," I said, maybe too quickly. "Just got out of a relationship, actually. That's why I needed a place so fast." Something flickered across Blake's face, but it was gone before I could identify it. "Fair enough. Well, welcome home, roommate." The first week passed in a blur of unpacking and settling in. Blake was an ideal roommate, quiet when I needed to focus, friendly but not overbearing. We fell into an easy rhythm, crossing paths in the kitchen in the mornings, occasionally watching TV together in the evenings, coexisting without friction. But I noticed things. Small things. The way Blake moved through the apartment with unconscious grace, economical and precise. The way his laugh rumbled low when something genuinely amused him. The way he'd run his hand through his hair when he was thinking, making it stick up in different directions. I noticed, and I told myself it didn't mean anything. Guys notice things about their roommates. It was normal. Observation wasn't attraction. 2 weeks in, Blake invited me to join him at the gym. I'd mentioned wanting to get back into working out after months of letting it slide, and he'd offered to add me to his membership as a guest. "I usually go around 7, he said over coffee one morning, "before it gets crowded. You interested?" I was interested in getting back in shape. That was all. That was the only reason I said yes. The gym was exactly as Blake described, nearly empty when we arrived. He moved through his warm-up with practiced efficiency, while I fumbled with equipment I hadn't touched in months, remembering why I'd let my own membership lapse. It was work, and I'd never enjoyed it enough to make it a priority. But watching Blake work was different. He approached each exercise with focused intensity, his form perfect, his breathing controlled. Sweat darkened his shirt in places that drew my eye, and I found myself tracking the flex of muscle in his shoulders, his arms, the way his body moved with confident strength. "You need help with that." Blake appeared beside me as I struggled with the bench press settings, his proximity sudden and overwhelming. "I've got it," I said, but my hands fumbled with the adjustment pin. Blake reached around me, his chest brushing against my shoulder as he fixed the setting with easy familiarity. He smelled like clean sweat and whatever soap he used, and the combination made my pulse jump in a way that had nothing to do with exercise. "There," he said, not moving away immediately. "You want a spot?" I should have said no, should have maintained distance, but instead I found myself nodding, lying back on the bench while Blake positioned himself behind me, his hands ready to catch the bar if I needed help. I lifted the weight, feeling the burn in my muscles, but I was more aware of Blake's presence above me, of the way I could see him if I looked up, of how close his hands were to mine on the bar. "Good," Blake said, his voice low and encouraging. "2 more. You've got this." I pushed through the last 2 reps, and when I racked the bar, Blake's hand came down to grip my shoulder. The touch was brief, congratulatory, completely innocent. But it sent electricity racing down my spine in a way that made me sit up too quickly, needing space to think. "Nice work," Blake said, seemingly unaware of my reaction. "You're stronger than you think." I managed something that might have been thanks, then escaped to the water fountain, my heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with the workout. This was normal, I told myself. Adrenaline from exercise, the natural response to encouragement and physical proximity. Nothing more, nothing weird. But that night, lying in my bed in the dark, I couldn't stop thinking about the weight of Blake's hand on my shoulder, the sound of his voice in my ear. And when I finally touched myself, chasing release before sleep, the images in my mind weren't of my ex or any of the women I'd been with before. They were of Blake. I pushed the thought away as soon as I finished, disgusted with myself. It was a fluke, crossed wires in my brain. I was just lonely, and Blake was there, and my subconscious had made a stupid mistake. It didn't mean anything. The next morning, I avoided eye contact with Blake over coffee, certain that somehow he'd be able to see what I'd been thinking, what I'd been imagining. But Blake was his normal self, friendly and casual, making plans to watch the game that weekend if I was interested. "Sure," I heard myself say. "Sounds good." And it was good. We ordered pizza, drank beer, yelled at the TV when our team made stupid plays. It felt normal, comfortable, exactly like hanging out with any of my other friends. Except I didn't notice the way my other friends' throats moved when they swallowed. Didn't find my attention drifting to the curve of their jaw or the way their hands looked holding a beer bottle. I was losing my mind. That was the only explanation. A month into living together, I came home from a particularly brutal day at work to find Blake in the kitchen, cooking something that smelled incredible. He was barefoot, wearing jeans and a worn t-shirt, completely at ease in a way I envied. "Rough day?" he asked without turning around. "How'd you know?" "You have a specific kind of silence when work's been hell." He glanced over his shoulder, his eyes reading my expression with unsettling accuracy. "Made extra if you're hungry." I should have gone to my room, should have maintained boundaries, but the apartment smelled like garlic and something rich and savory, and I was tired and hungry, and Blake's offer felt like exactly what I needed. "What is it?" I asked, moving to stand beside him at the stove. "Pasta, nothing fancy." He stirred the sauce with practiced ease. "My mom's recipe, comfort food." We ate at the small kitchen table, our knees occasionally bumping in the cramped space. Blake asked about my day, and I found myself actually talking about it, venting frustration I usually kept bottled up. He listened without judgment, offering the occasional comment that showed he was actually paying attention. "Your boss sounds like an asshole," Blake observed when I finished describing the latest impossible deadline. "He is, but the pay's good." I stabbed at my pasta, then looked up at Blake. "What about you? Do you like the freelance thing? Most days, it's isolating sometimes, being home alone all the time. But I like the freedom. He paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. It's nice having you here, actually. Makes the apartment feel less empty. The admission was casual, but something in his tone made my chest tighten. I looked down at my plate, unable to hold his gaze, and mumbled something about being glad to be here. That night I lay awake longer than usual, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand what was happening to me. I wasn't gay. I'd never questioned my sexuality before. I'd had girlfriends, enjoyed sex with women, felt attraction to them in all the normal ways. But Blake made me feel something different, something I didn't have words for yet, something that terrified me, even as I couldn't stop seeking it out. The almost moments started after that. Times when we'd both reach for the same coffee mug and our fingers would brush, the contact lasting a beat too long, when Blake would lean over my shoulder to look at something on my laptop and I'd feel the warmth of his body against my back, when our eyes would meet across the room and hold for seconds that stretched into something loaded and electric. I told myself I was imagining it. Blake was just being friendly, just being a good roommate. The tension I felt was one-sided, a product of my own confusion and whatever weird crisis I was having. But then Blake started finding excuses to touch me, a hand on my shoulder when he passed behind me, fingers brushing my arm when he handed me something, standing close enough that I could feel the heat of him, close enough that I had to actively resist the urge to lean in. 2 months into living together, everything came to a head over something stupid. A movie we both wanted to watch, available for streaming for one night only. We settled onto the couch with beers and snacks, Blake's body close enough that I could feel the shift of muscle when he moved. The movie was good, suspenseful enough to keep my attention through the first act. But I was hyper-aware of Blake beside me, of the way our shoulders occasionally brushed, of how easy it would be to just lean a little closer. Halfway through, Blake shifted position, his arm coming to rest along the back of the couch behind me. Not touching, but close, present. My heart hammered in my chest, but I forced myself to stay still, to focus on the screen, to pretend this was normal. Then his fingers brushed the back of my neck, just a graze, almost accidental, but it sent shivers cascading down my spine, made me forget to breathe. I should have moved away, should have made some excuse and gone to my room. But I stayed frozen, barely watching the movie anymore, all my attention on that point of contact where Blake's fingers rested against my skin. "Ryan," Blake said quietly, and I made the mistake of turning to look at him. His face was inches from mine, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his eyes, could feel his breath against my lips. Close enough that if either of us moved even slightly, we'd be kissing. "I should tell you something," Blake continued, his voice low and rough. "I'm not exactly straight." My mouth went dry. "Okay. And I think you might not be either." His fingers pressed more firmly against my neck, not pulling me closer but anchoring me in place. "Or maybe you are, and I'm reading this completely wrong. But the way you look at me sometimes, the way you react when I touch you, I don't think I'm imagining it." Every denial I'd been telling myself for 2 months crystallized on my tongue, ready to be deployed. But looking into Blake's eyes, feeling the weight of his hand on my neck, I couldn't make the words come. "I don't know what I am," I admitted finally, the confession ripping out of me. "I've never felt like this about a guy before. I don't understand what's happening." Blake's expression softened. "You don't have to understand it right now. You don't have to put a label on it, or figure everything out tonight. Then what do I have to do? Tell me if you want me to stop." His thumb stroked along my jaw, gentle and devastating. "Tell me if this is something you don't want." I should have said yes, should have established boundaries and maintained my sense of self. But the truth was, I'd been wanting this since the day I moved in, maybe before I'd even consciously recognized it. "I don't want you to stop," I whispered. Blake smiled, slow and pleased and hungry all at once. Good, because I've been thinking about kissing you for weeks and the waiting is killing me. He leaned in, giving me every chance to pull away. When I didn't, when I actually tilted my head up in invitation, his lips met mine in a kiss that short-circuited every thought I'd ever had about who I was or what I wanted. His mouth was warm and firm and sure, moving against mine with practiced skill that made my inexperience obvious. But Blake didn't seem to mind. His hand tightened on my neck, angling my head for better access, and his other hand came up to cup my face as he deepened the kiss. I'd been kissed before. I'd kissed women and enjoyed it, felt attraction and desire and all the appropriate responses. But this was different. This was overwhelming in a way that made every previous experience feel like practice. For something I hadn't known I was preparing for. Blake's tongue traced the seam of my lips, and I opened for him without thinking, letting him explore, letting him taste me. A sound escaped my throat. Something between a gasp and a moan, and I felt Blake's smile against my mouth. "Fuck," he breathed when he finally pulled back, his forehead resting against mine. "You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that." My hands had somehow found their way to his shirt, fisted in the fabric like I was afraid he'd disappear if I let go. "Since when?" "Since you walked through the door 2 months ago, looking lost and hopeful and completely beautiful." "I'm not beautiful. I'm just a regular guy." "You're beautiful to me." Blake's hand slid from my face to my throat, his thumb resting over my pulse point where my heart hammered frantically. "And you're terrified. I can feel it." "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted. "I've never done this before. Never even thought about doing this before." "That's okay. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for." Blake's voice was gentle despite the desire I could see in his eyes. "We can stop right here. Go back to being roommates who pretend this never happened." "I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." "Then what do you want?" I looked at him, at this man who'd somehow become the center of my thoughts without me realizing it, and found the courage to tell the truth. "I want you to kiss me again." Blake's smile was brilliant, transforming his face into something that made my chest ache. "I can do that." This time when he kissed me, it was slower, more thorough. He took his time exploring my mouth, teaching me the rhythm, showing me how to respond. His hands remained on my face and neck, grounding without demanding, giving me space to adjust to the overwhelming newness of it all. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Blake pulled me against his chest. I went willingly, tucking my face against his shoulder and trying to process what had just happened. "You okay?" Blake's hand stroked up and down my back, soothing. "I don't know," I said honestly. "My brain is kind of short-circuiting right now." "That's fair. This is a lot." He pressed a kiss to the top of my head, casual and affectionate. "You want to talk about it? Or do you need space to think?" I should have needed space. Should have retreated to my room to freak out in private. But the thought of leaving Blake's arms made my chest tight with something that felt like panic. "Can we just stay like this for a while?" I asked quietly. "We can stay like this as long as you want." We ended up stretched out on the couch, the forgotten movie playing in the background while Blake held me against his chest. His heartbeat was steady under my ear, his breathing even, and slowly I felt my own panic subside into something quieter. "I need you to know something," I said eventually. "I'm not using you to experiment or figure myself out. Whatever this is, however confused I am about it, you're not just some test run for me." Blake's arms tightened around me. "I wasn't thinking that. I just wanted to say it, because you deserve to know that this matters to me. You matter to me. You matter to me too, Ryan. More than I probably should admit after only 2 months." He shifted so he could look at my face. "Which is why we're going to take this slow. No rushing, no pressure. We figure it out together, at whatever pace feels right. What if I can't figure it out? What if I wake up tomorrow and freak out completely? Then we deal with it together. Blake's hand cupped my face, his thumb stroking my cheekbone. I'm not going anywhere. Whether this becomes something more or stays exactly here, I'm still your roommate, still your friend. Nothing changes unless you want it to. The reassurance settled something anxious in my chest. I think I want it to change. I'm just scared of what that means. Being scared is normal. Change is terrifying. Blake smiled softly. But sometimes the scary things are worth it. We stayed on the couch until late, talking quietly about nothing important, stealing occasional kisses that felt simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. When Blake finally walked me to my bedroom door, he kissed me goodnight with a tenderness that made my throat tight. "Sleep well," he said, his hand lingering on my waist. "And Ryan, whatever you're feeling right now, whatever you're thinking, it's okay. There's no wrong answer here." I nodded, not trusting my voice, and slipped into my room. The door closed behind me, and I stood in the darkness, my fingers touching my lips, where I could still feel the ghost of Blake's mouth. What had I done? What was I doing? But even as the questions spiraled through my mind, I couldn't regret it. Couldn't regret the way Blake had felt in my arms, the taste of him on my tongue, the overwhelming rightness of finally giving in to what I'd been fighting for 2 months. I climbed into bed, my body still humming with the aftershocks of Blake's touch. And for the first time since moving in, I let myself imagine what might come next. The next morning arrived with bright sunlight and crushing anxiety. I lay in bed longer than necessary, trying to work up the courage to face Blake after last night. What did I say? How did I act? Did we pretend nothing happened? Did we talk about it? The smell of coffee finally drew me out of my room. Blake was in the kitchen wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair still messy from sleep. He looked up when I entered, and his smile was warm but cautious. "Mornin'. Coffee's fresh." "Thanks." I poured a cup, acutely aware of the space between us, of how easy it would be to close that distance. "About last night? We don't have to talk about it if you're not ready," Blake interrupted gently. "No, I want to. I just don't know what to say." I took a sip of coffee, buying time. I didn't freak out. "That's probably good, right?" Blake's smile widened. "That's very good. How are you feeling?" "Confused, terrified, but also..." I met his eyes. "Also, like maybe something finally makes sense." "Yeah?" "Yeah." I set down my coffee and crossed to where he stood by the counter. My hands shook slightly as I reached for him, but Blake met me halfway, his arms coming around me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I don't have this figured out," I said against his shoulder. "I might not have it figured out for a while, but I want to try, with you." Blake pulled back just enough to kiss me, soft and sweet and perfect. That's all I need to hear. The days that followed were a strange blend of normal and extraordinary. We still went to work, still did groceries, still maintained the routines of shared living, but now those routines included stolen kisses in the kitchen, Blake's hand finding mine when we watched TV, falling asleep on the couch together more nights than not. Blake kept his promise about going slow. He never pushed for more than I was ready to give, never made me feel pressured or rushed, but he also made his interest clear, made sure I knew that when I was ready, he'd be there. 3 weeks after our first kiss, I came home from work to find Blake in his room with the door open, working at his desk. He glanced up when he heard me, his face brightening in a way that made my chest warm. "Hey, how was work?" "Long." I leaned against his doorframe, watching him. "What are you working on?" "Logo design for a new client. Want to see?" I moved into his room, a space I'd only glimpsed before. It was neat but lived in, with a large desk dominating one wall and his bed against the other, personal touches everywhere, photos, artwork, books stacked on every surface. Blake pulled up his design, and I leaned over his shoulder to look, acutely aware of how close we were. His work was good, clean lines and bold colors that somehow captured exactly what the client had probably wanted. "That's incredible," I said honestly. "Thanks." Blake saved the file and turned his chair to face me. You know, you've been in my room for a full minute, and you look like you might bolt any second. What's going on in that head of yours? I took a breath. I've been thinking. Dangerous activity. I'm serious. I sat on the edge of his bed, needing the distance to say what I'd been rehearsing all day. I've been thinking about us, about what this is, and what I want it to be. Blake's expression went carefully neutral. Okay. And I've realized something. I looked up at him. I've been so focused on the label, on whether I'm gay or bi or whatever, that I've been missing the point. Which is that I want you, specifically you. However that's defined, whatever that makes me, I want this. Want us. Blake was out of his chair in an instant, crossing to the bed and cupping my face in his hands. You're sure? I'm sure I want to stop holding back. Sure I want to see where this goes. I covered his hands with mine. I'm sure about you. The kiss Blake gave me was different from all the others. Deeper, more claiming, full of relief and desire, and something that felt dangerously close to love. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with want. Tell me what you need, he said, his voice rough. I need you to show me. My hands fisted in his shirt. Show me what this can be. Blake's breath came faster. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I don't know what I'm asking. I just know I'm tired of stopping before it gets good. Tired of being too scared to find out what happens next. Ryan, Blake's forehead rested against mine. If we do this, there's no going back. You understand that? I don't want to go back. The sound Blake made was part groan, part laugh. You're gonna kill me, you know that? Then his mouth was on mine again. And this time, when his hand slipped under my shirt, I didn't stop him. This time, when he guided me back onto his bed, I went willingly. This time, when he asked if I was sure, I answered with my body instead of words, arching into his touch and pulling him closer. Slow, Blake murmured against my throat. We're going slow. I'm gonna make this good for you. And he did. God, he did. Blake took his time, mapping every inch of skin he uncovered, learning what made me gasp and what made me moan. His hands were sure where mine shook, his experience evident in the way he knew exactly how to touch me, exactly what I needed before I could ask for it. When he finally stripped me bare, when I lay exposed and vulnerable beneath him, I felt a moment of panic. But Blake just looked at me with something like awe in his eyes. Beautiful, he said, his hand splaying across my chest. I told you that you were beautiful. Blake, I couldn't finish the sentence. I know, that's okay. We'll go at your pace. He kissed me slowly. Just feel. Let yourself feel everything. So I did. I let Blake show me what it was like to be touched by someone who knew male bodies, who understood the mechanics and the psychology both. Let him teach me that desire didn't have a gender, that pleasure was pleasure regardless of who gave it to you. When his hand wrapped around me, the sensation was familiar and completely foreign all at once. I'd touched myself countless times, but this was different. This was Blake, watching my face as he learned what I liked, adjusting his grip and rhythm based on the sounds I made. That's it, he encouraged when my hips started moving on their own. Take what you need. Show me what feels good. I lasted embarrassingly short, my body wound too tight with weeks of anticipation and denial. When I came, Blake's name was on my lips, and the satisfaction in his eyes made the embarrassment worth it. Perfect, Blake murmured, kissing me through the aftershocks. You're perfect. I didn't do anything for you, I protested weakly. This was for you. Your first time with a guy should be about you. He settled beside me on the bed, pulling me against his chest. We have plenty of time for everything else. I should have felt awkward lying naked in Blake's arms, but instead I felt safe, sated, like something I'd been searching for without knowing it had finally clicked into place. I'm not straight, I said into the quiet. Blake's laugh rumbled against my back. No, you're really not. I might not be entirely gay either. Labels are overrated. His arm tightened around me. All that matters is this. You and me. Everything else is just noise. I turned in his arms so I could see his face. What are we, Blake? Are we dating? Are you my boyfriend? How does this work? We're whatever you want us to be. Blake tucked hair behind my ear. But if you're asking what I want to be your boyfriend. Want to take you on actual dates and introduce you to my friends and wake up next to you as often as you'll let me. I want that too, I admitted, even though it terrifies me. The best things usually do. We stayed in Blake's bed for hours, talking and touching and learning each other in ways I'd never let myself imagine before. And when I finally slipped back to my own room as dawn approached, it wasn't because I wanted distance. It was because we both had work in a few hours and needed at least some sleep. But lying in my own bed, my body still humming with the memory of Blake's hands, I knew something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't the same person who'd moved in 3 months ago, certain of his identity and his place in the world. I was someone new. Someone learning to be honest about his desires. Someone brave enough to reach for what he wanted, even when it scared him. I was Blake's boyfriend. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The morning light found me still awake, staring at the ceiling with a smile I couldn't suppress. My phone buzzed with a text from Blake. You awake? Yeah, can't sleep. Come here. I was out of bed before I could overthink it, padding down the hall to Blake's room. He'd left the door cracked open, and when I slipped inside, he lifted the covers in invitation. I climbed into his bed, and his arms came around me immediately, pulling me back against his chest. His lips found my neck, gentle and affectionate. Couldn't let you sleep alone on your first night being gay, he murmured against my skin. Bye, I corrected. Maybe, I don't know yet. Doesn't matter. His hand splayed across my stomach, warm and possessive. You're mine either way. The claim should have scared me, should have made me pull away and reassert my independence. But instead, it made me feel cherished, wanted, like I'd finally found someone who saw me completely and wanted me anyway. Yeah, I whispered into the darkness. I'm yours. Blake held me tighter, and I finally let sleep claim me. Safe in the knowledge that when I woke up, everything would be different. Everything would be better. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the warm weight of Blake's arm across my waist. For a moment, I panicked, disoriented by the wrong room, the wrong bed, the solid male body pressed against my back. Then, memory flooded in, and with it came a rush of emotions I didn't have names for yet. I'd slept with Blake. Well, not slept with him in the full sense, but I'd been intimate with another man for the first time in my life, had let him touch me, bring me pleasure, reduce me to desperate sounds I'd never made before. And instead of regretting it in the harsh light of morning, I wanted more. Blake stirred behind me, his breath warm against my neck. Morning, he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. How are you feeling? Good, I said, and meant it. Really good, actually. No freak out? No sudden urge to run screaming? I turned in his arms so I could see his face. His hair was a disaster, sticking up in multiple directions, and he had pillow creases on his cheek. He'd never looked better. No freak out. Is that weird? It's perfect. Blake's hand came up to cup my face, his thumb stroking my cheekbone. I was worried you'd wake up and regret everything. I don't regret it. I leaned into his touch. I keep waiting to feel ashamed or confused, but all I feel is happy, and maybe a little scared of what comes next. What do you think comes next? I took a breath, gathering courage. I want to know what it feels like, all of it. I want you to show me everything. Blake's eyes darkened with desire, but his voice remained steady. We don't have to rush. Last night was intense. You're allowed to take time to process. I've been processing for 3 months. My hand found his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath my palm. I'm done overthinking this. I want you, Blake. Want to know what it's like to be with you completely. The sound Blake made was low and hungry. You're sure? Because once we go there, once I really have you, I'm not going to want to stop. Then don't stop. I kissed him, pouring everything I felt into the contact. Take me, teach me, show me what I've been missing. Blake rolled me beneath him in one smooth motion, his weight settling over me in a way that made me feel claimed and protected all at once. You have work in 2 hours. Call in sick. Ryan, I mean it. I pulled him down for another kiss. I don't want to wait anymore. Don't want to spend another day wondering what this could be like. Please, Blake. He groaned against my mouth. You're going to ruin me, you know that? Good. Then we're even. What followed was an education in sensation I'd never imagined. Blake took his time despite my impatience, mapping my body with hands and mouth until I was trembling and desperate. He found places that made me gasp, discovered triggers I hadn't known existed, learned me with thorough attention that left me feeling worshipped. When he finally reached between my legs again, his touch was confident and sure, knowing exactly what I needed. But this time, he didn't stop there. This time, his fingers traveled lower, pressing against places I'd never been touched before. I tensed instinctively, and Blake immediately stilled. Breathe, he murmured against my throat. Just breathe. I'm going to make you feel so good, but you need to relax for me. I don't know if I can. Yes, you can. Trust me. His free hand found mine, lacing our fingers together. I've got you. Just feel. He worked me open slowly, patiently, his fingers gentle as they breached that first barrier. The sensation was strange, uncomfortable at first, but Blake kept talking, kept praising, kept touching me in other ways that made the strangeness fade into something deeper. That's it, he encouraged when I finally started to relax. Let me in. Let me show you how good this can be. When he found that spot inside me, the one that made stars explode behind my eyes, I cried out with surprise and overwhelming pleasure. Blake smiled against my skin, filing that reaction away, and proceeded to reduce me to a begging, desperate mess. Please, I gasped, not even sure what I was asking for. Blake, please. Please what? Use your words. I need more. Need you, all of you. Blake's breath caught. You want me inside you? Want me to be your first? Yes, God, yes, please. He kissed me deeply, thoroughly, while his hands continued their patient preparation. When he finally pulled away to grab supplies from his nightstand, I felt the loss of his touch like a physical ache. This might hurt at first, Blake said as he settled between my legs. If it's too much, if you need me to stop, you tell me immediately, understand? I nodded, my heart racing with anticipation and nerves in equal measure. Words, Ryan. I understand. I'll tell you if it's too much. Blake positioned himself, and I felt the pressure of him against me, larger and more intimidating than his fingers had been. He pushed forward slowly, watching my face with intense focus, ready to stop at the first sign of real pain. The stretch was intense, burning as my body struggled to accept the intrusion, but Blake kept one hand on me, stroking in rhythm with his careful advance, giving me competing sensations to focus on, and gradually, impossibly, the burn faded into something else, something that felt like fullness and connection and rightness. Breathe, Blake reminded me when he was finally fully seated. Just breathe and adjust. We're not in a rush. But lying there with Blake inside me, feeling more claimed and owned than I'd ever felt in my life, patience was impossible. I shifted my hips experimentally, and the sensation sent electricity racing through my nervous system. Fuck, Blake groaned. Don't do that unless you want this to be over embarrassingly fast. Then move. Please, Blake. I need you to move. He pulled back slowly, then pushed in again, setting a careful rhythm that let me feel every inch of him. The sensation was overwhelming, intense in ways I couldn't articulate. This was nothing like sex with women. This was being taken, being filled, being completely at someone else's mercy. And I loved it. Blake read my responses like a book, adjusting his angle until he found that spot inside me again. When he hit it, I saw stars, my back arching off the bed as pleasure crashed through me in waves. There, Blake said with satisfaction. Found it. Now let's see how long you can last. He proceeded to prove exactly how skilled he was, varying his pace and depth and angle to keep me right on the edge without letting me fall over. My hands fisted in the sheets, my voice breaking on pleas and curses and his name repeated like a prayer. When Blake finally wrapped his hand around me again, the dual sensation was too much. I came with a cry that I'd probably be embarrassed about later, my body clenching around him in rhythmic pulses. Blake followed moments later, his own release shuddering through him as he buried himself deep and held there. The feel of him pulsing inside me sent aftershocks cascading through my oversensitized body. We collapsed together in a tangle of limbs and heaving breaths. Blake pulled out carefully, and I winced at the sensation and the immediate sense of loss. "How are you?" Blake asked, his fingers gentle in my hair. "Wrecked," I managed. "Completely destroyed." I couldn't find words adequate to describe what I'd just experienced. "Yeah," Blake agreed, understanding without me having to finish. "It really was." We lay there while our breathing returned to normal, Blake's arms around me and my face pressed against his chest. Eventually, reality intruded in the form of my phone alarm, reminding me that work existed and I was supposed to be there in an hour. "I really don't want to go," I said. "Then don't. Call in sick. Spend the day with me. I've already used most of my sick days this year." "Worth it?" Blake's hand traced lazy patterns on my back. I thought about it. Thought about facing my coworkers and my boss and pretending I was the same person I'd been yesterday. Thought about sitting at my desk trying to focus on spreadsheets when all I wanted was to stay in this bed with Blake and explore everything we'd just discovered. Completely worth it. I reached for my phone and typed out a quick message to my supervisor about food poisoning. "There, done. I'm all yours for the day." Blake's smile was brilliant. "Best decision you've made all week." "Second best," I corrected, kissing him. "Best was letting you kiss me 2 days ago." We spent the morning in bed, dozing and talking and learning each other's bodies with thorough attention. Blake showed me that what we'd done could be even better with practice, that my body could take more than I'd thought possible, that pleasure had depths I'd never imagined. Around noon, hunger finally drove us from bed. We stumbled to the kitchen, Blake wearing sweatpants and me in borrowed clothes that were too big but smelled like him. Blake cooked while I watched, still processing everything that had happened, everything I'd discovered about myself in the span of 12 hours. "What are you thinking about?" Blake asked as he set a plate in front of me. "How different I feel. How I keep waiting to freak out about being with a guy, about liking it, about wanting more, but the freak out never comes. Maybe because this is who you've always been. You just didn't know it yet." I considered that. Or maybe it's not about men versus women. Maybe it's just about you. Blake's hand found mine across the table. I can live with that. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind that only exists between people who've been intimate. Afterward, we migrated to the couch, Blake pulling me against his side while we put on a movie neither of us paid attention to. "I need to tell you something," I said during a quiet moment. "And I need you to hear me." Blake muted the TV. "I'm listening." "What happened this morning, what we did, it wasn't just physical for me. It wasn't me experimenting or trying to figure myself out." I turned to face him. "I'm falling for you, Blake. Hard and fast, and probably too soon to be saying this out loud, but it's true." Blake's expression softened into something tender and vulnerable. "It's not too soon. I've been falling for you since the day you moved in. Every day with you just made it worse." "Worse?" "Worse in the best way, like drowning but not wanting to be saved." His hand cupped my face. "I love you, Ryan. I know it's fast, but I'm done pretending I don't." The words sent warmth cascading through my chest. "I love you too, even though I barely understand what that means when it comes to being with a guy. It means the same thing it always means. You care about someone more than you care about yourself. You want their happiness even when it costs you something. You choose them every day, not because you have to, but because you can't imagine doing anything else." "Then yeah," I said softly, "I definitely love you." Blake kissed me slow and sweet, and I lost myself in the taste of him, the feel of him, the overwhelming rightness of being exactly where I was. The rest of the day passed in a haze of contentment. We ordered takeout when dinner rolled around, ate sprawled on the couch with our legs tangled together. We talked about everything and nothing, learning each other in ways that had nothing to do with physical intimacy. I told Blake about my family, about parents who had expectations I'd never quite met, about always feeling like I was performing a role instead of living authentically. He told me about coming out in college, about the friends he'd lost and the family members who'd struggled to accept him, about building a life that was honest, even when it was hard. "Do you think you'll come out?" Blake asked carefully. "To your family, your friends?" I thought about it. "Eventually, yeah. I don't want to hide you. Don't want to pretend we're just roommates when you're so much more than that." I paused, but I might need some time to figure out how to explain this to people who thought they knew me. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." That night, we went to bed together without discussion or hesitation. Blake's bed had become our bed somewhere in the past 24 hours. As we settled into sleep, his arms around me and my head on his chest, I marveled at how quickly life could change. 3 days ago, I'd been certain I knew who I was. Now, I was someone different, someone braver, someone willing to reach for happiness even when it came in unexpected packages. "Blake," I said into the darkness. "Yeah?" "Thank you for seeing me, for being patient, for showing me what I was missing." His arms tightened around me. "Thank you for being brave enough to let me in." The weeks that followed were a revelation. Blake and I fell into a routine that felt simultaneously new and like we'd been together for years. We woke up tangled together, made coffee while stealing kisses, went about our days before coming back together in the evenings. My coworkers noticed something was different. I caught them exchanging looks when I smiled at my phone, or when I turned down after work drinks because I had plans. But no one asked directly, and I wasn't ready to explain yet. Blake was patient with my need for discretion, never pushing me to come out before I was ready. But he also made it clear that he wouldn't hide forever, that eventually I'd need to decide how public I wanted our relationship to be. The decision was made for me when my ex-girlfriend showed up at the apartment unannounced one Saturday afternoon. Blake and I were on the couch, thoroughly wrapped up in each other, when her knock interrupted us. I froze, panic flooding my system. Blake sat up slowly, giving me space to decide how to handle this. "It's okay," he said quietly. "Whatever you need to do, I understand." But looking at Blake, at this man who'd shown me what it meant to be truly seen and accepted, I realized I didn't want to hide, didn't want to pretend he was just my roommate, or that what we had was anything less than real. I answered the door with Blake at my side, his presence solid and grounding. My ex, Sarah, took in the scene with widening eyes. The way I stood close to Blake, the protective hand he had on my lower back, the unmistakable intimacy between us. "Oh," she said, her expression cycling through surprise and understanding. "That's why you were so distant those last few months, why it always felt like you were somewhere else. Sarah, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I wasn't trying to lead you on." She shook her head. "I'm not mad. Honestly, I'm relieved. I thought it was something I'd done wrong." Her eyes shifted to Blake. "I'm Sarah, the ex-girlfriend. Blake, the current boyfriend." He extended his hand, and after a moment she shook it. "Take care of him," Sarah said. "He's terrible at asking for what he needs." "I've noticed. Working on that." Sarah left after an awkward but not hostile conversation, and I closed the door feeling lighter than I had in months. Blake pulled me into his arms, and I let myself be held, processing what had just happened. "You called yourself my boyfriend?" I said against his shoulder. "Is that okay? I know we haven't really defined things officially." I pulled back to look at him. "It's more than okay. It's perfect." That night I called my parents. My hands shook as I dialed, Blake beside me on the couch offering silent support. When my mom answered, cheerful and unsuspecting, I almost lost my nerve. "Hey, Mom, do you have a minute? I need to tell you something." Blake's hand found mine, his fingers lacing through mine in reassurance. "I'm seeing someone," I continued. "It's serious, really serious. And before you ask, it's not Sarah. We broke up months ago." "Oh, honey, that's wonderful. What's her name?" I took a breath. "His name is Blake. Mom, I'm dating a guy. I'm bisexual or gay or something. I'm still figuring out the labels. But I'm in love with him, and I wanted you to know." The silence on the other end stretched for what felt like eternity. Blake squeezed my hand tighter. "Mom, I'm here. She paused. "This is unexpected, but you sound happy. Are you happy?" "Happier than I've ever been." "Then that's what matters." Her voice was careful, but not cold. "I'd like to meet him when you're ready. Your father might need some time, but we love you. That doesn't change." Tears pricked my eyes. "Thanks, Mom. That means everything." After I hung up, Blake pulled me into his lap, holding me while I processed the relief and residual fear. "You did it," he murmured. "You were so brave." "I'm terrified." "I know, but you don't have to be terrified alone anymore." Coming out to my friends was easier. Some were surprised, others claimed they'd suspected all along. A few pulled away, uncomfortable with this new version of me. But the ones who mattered stayed, accepting Blake into our circle with varying degrees of enthusiasm. 3 months into our relationship, Blake suggested we have friends over for dinner. A small gathering, just a few people from each of our lives, to blend our worlds together. I stressed over the menu, over whether my friends and his friends would get along, over 1,000 small details. Blake watched my spiral with amusement, finally pulling me into his arms. "It's just dinner. If they don't get along, we never have to do it again. But I think they will, because they care about us, and they'll see how good we are together." He was right. The dinner was chaotic and loud and perfect. My college roommate hit it off with Blake's graphic designer friends. My work buddy spent the entire night debating sports with Blake's gym partner. And through it all, Blake kept finding ways to touch me, to include me, to make me feel like I belonged exactly where I was. As I watched our friends mingling in our apartment, Blake's arm around my waist, I realized this was it. This was the life I'd been too afraid to imagine for myself. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and honest and mine. That night, after everyone left and we were cleaning up the kitchen together, Blake caught me around the waist and pulled me against him. "Move in with me," he said, "officially, not as roommates but as partners. I already live here. You know what I mean. Give up your room. Make this our place, not yours and mine. Build a life with me intentionally." I turned in his arms. "Are you sure? It's only been 3 months. I've never been more sure of anything. But if you need more time..." "No." I kissed him, pouring everything I felt into it. "I don't need more time. Yes, let's do it." Blake's smile was radiant. "Yeah? Yeah. Let's build something together." We converted my old room into Blake's office, giving him proper space for his work instead of the cramped corner he'd been using. We rearranged furniture, blended our belongings, created something that was ours instead of his or mine. 6 months in, I came home from work to find Blake pacing the living room, nervous energy radiating from him. "What's wrong?" I asked, dropping my bag. "Nothing's wrong. He ran a hand through his hair. "I have something to ask you, and I'm terrified you'll think it's too soon." My heart started racing. "Okay, what is it?" Blake pulled a small box from his pocket, and my breath caught. "I know it's fast. I know people will say we're crazy, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He opened the box to reveal 2 simple silver bands. "I don't care about legal marriage or big ceremonies. I just want a promise, a commitment that what we have is real and permanent." Tears blurred my vision. "Blake, let me finish. You changed my life the day you walked through that door, made me believe in things I'd stopped hoping for, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you've made me." He pulled one of the rings from the box. "So, Ryan, will you wear this? Will you choose me every day the way I choose you? I couldn't speak past the emotion clogging my throat, so I just held out my hand. Blake slipped the ring on my finger, and I took the second ring, sliding it onto his with trembling hands. Is that a yes? Blake asked, his voice rough. It's a hell yes. It's an always yes. I kissed him, tasting salt from tears I didn't know I was crying. I love you so much. I love you too, so fucking much. We made love that night with new intensity, the rings on our fingers a physical reminder of promises made. Blake took his time, worshiping every inch of me, showing me with his body what words couldn't quite capture. When he finally pushed inside me, I felt the familiar stretch and burn give way to fullness and completion. We moved together with practiced ease, having learned each other's bodies thoroughly over months of exploration. Mine, Blake breathed against my throat as he drove deeper. You're mine now, officially. Yours, I agreed, my fingers digging into his shoulders. Always yours. He brought me to the edge again and again, holding me there until I was begging incoherently. When he finally let me fall, the orgasm crashed through me with devastating intensity, pulling him over the edge with me. After, we lay tangled together, sweaty and satisfied and complete. Blake's fingers played with the ring on my hand, spinning it absently. Any regrets? He asked quietly. I thought about the person I'd been when I moved in, certain of my identity, comfortable in my assumptions about who I was and what I wanted. That person had been living half a life, going through motions without ever really feeling anything. Not even one, I said, honestly. This is the best thing I never knew I wanted. Blake pulled me closer. Same. You're the best thing I never knew I needed. A year into our relationship, Blake surprised me with a trip. We drove to a small cabin in the mountains, far from the city and all its noise. For 3 days, we existed in a bubble where nothing mattered except each other. We hiked through the woods, made love in front of the fireplace, talked about dreams and fears and everything in between. On the last night, lying in bed with Blake's arms around me and the sound of rain on the roof, I felt something settle deep in my chest. I'm happy, I said, the realization feeling momentous, not just content or comfortable, actually, genuinely happy. Good, you deserve to be happy. So do you. I turned to face him. Are you? Happy, I mean. Blake's smile was soft and genuine, happier than I ever thought possible. You gave me that. We gave each other that. Yeah, Blake agreed, kissing me slowly. We really did. The rain continued falling as we made love one more time, slow and tender and perfect. And when we drove home the next day, our hands linked over the console, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd found where I belonged. Not in a place, but with a person. With Blake, who'd seen me at my most confused and loved me anyway. Who'd been patient while I figured myself out. Who'd shown me that sometimes the life you think you want isn't nearly as good as the one you never saw coming. I'd walked into that apartment 9 months ago, thinking I needed a place to sleep. What I'd found was home. Years would pass. We'd face challenges and celebrate victories. We'd grow and change and become new versions of ourselves. But through all of it, one thing would remain constant. Blake was mine, and I was his. Not because we had to be, but because we chose it. Every single day, we chose each other, and that made all the difference. Our second anniversary arrived on a crisp autumn day. Blake had insisted on cooking dinner, refusing my help in the kitchen. I sat at the counter, watching him work with the easy confidence that had drawn me in from the beginning. Remember when you burned toast? I teased. That was one time, and you distracted me. I was just sitting here, exactly like I am now. Blake glanced over his shoulder, his eyes warm. Exactly. You're very distracting when you just sit there looking beautiful. I still wasn't used to being called beautiful. After 26 years of thinking of myself as average at best, Blake's consistent insistence that I was attractive had slowly started to rewrite my self-image. What are you making? I asked. The same thing I made the first night you came home from that awful day at work. The night everything started changing. My chest tightened with emotion. Your mom's pasta recipe. Figured it was appropriate, full circle and all that. We ate by candlelight, Blake having set the table with actual cloth napkins and our nicest plates. It felt momentous somehow, like we were celebrating more than just 2 years together. We were celebrating everything we'd built, everything we'd become. After dinner, Blake pulled me to the couch. "I have something for you." We said no gifts. This isn't a gift, it's more of a question. He pulled out his phone, showing me a real estate listing. "What do you think?" I looked at the photos of a small house with a yard and big windows. "It's beautiful. Are you thinking of moving?" "I'm thinking of us moving. Together. Buying a place that's really ours." Blake's hand found mine. Building something permanent. I stared at the listing, then at Blake, then at the ring on my finger that I'd worn for over a year. "You want to buy a house with me? I want to build a life with you. A real, permanent, this is forever life. House, yard, maybe a dog eventually. All of it." He paused. "If that's what you want too. It's everything I want." I kissed him hard. "Let's do it. Let's buy a house and build a life and have all of it." Blake's smile was brilliant. "Yeah? Yeah, absolutely yeah." 3 months later, we moved into our house. It needed work, but it was ours. We spent weekends painting walls and assembling furniture and arguing good-naturedly about decorating choices. We hosted our first dinner party in a half-finished dining room and didn't care that not everything was perfect, because it was ours. We'd built it together. One evening, as we sat on our back porch watching the sunset, Blake's arm around my shoulders, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From terrified roommates to this, homeowners planning a future together. "Do you ever wonder how different things would be if I'd found a different apartment?" I asked. "Every day. And every day I'm grateful you found mine." "Me too." I leaned into him. "Best wrong turn I ever made." "It wasn't wrong. It was exactly right." Blake kissed my temple. We were exactly right. And sitting there with the man I loved, in the home we'd built together, I knew he was correct. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never see coming. The ones that scare you at first. The ones that require you to reimagine everything you thought you knew about yourself. I'd been so certain I was straight. So sure I knew who I was and what I wanted. Blake had shown me that certainty was overrated. That being open to unexpected possibilities could lead to happiness I'd never imagined. I wasn't the same person who'd moved into that apartment 2 years ago. I was someone braver, more honest, more authentically myself. And I had Blake to thank for that. Blake, who'd seen something in me I hadn't seen in myself. Who'd been patient while I figured it out. Who'd loved me through confusion and fear and self-discovery. "I love you," I said. The words as true now as they'd been the first time I'd said them. "I love you too," Blake replied, holding me closer. "Always." The sun set over our backyard, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere inside, our life waited. Dishes to wash, rooms to finish, a future to build together. But for this moment, we just sat together. 2 men who'd found each other against all odds, who'd built something real and lasting and true. I'd thought I wasn't gay, thought I couldn't be. But Blake had shown me that labels didn't matter nearly as much as the person. That love was love, regardless of gender. That home wasn't a place, but a person who saw you completely and chose you anyway. Blake was my home, and I was his, and that was all the identity I needed.